Hello guys, welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it comes from a translation of a message that I received. Strange things do happen in this world. The message reads like this: Hello my brother, how are you? Can you please post my story as hidden identity? I am a man who is aged 29 years old. So I used to be a taxi driver. I can say that I started being a taxi driver when I was around 15, I think 15 to 16 years old. And that was when I migrated from the rural areas and I went to this other place where there was a taxi rank whereby people who used to stay in our village would get off the taxi, then they would go to our village. From there on, I managed to find my way into the town. Whilst I was in the city, that was when I started working as a taxi driver, even before I had an ID, before I had ever gotten my driver's license. I was already operating as a taxi driver. So it happened that most of the women that I used to meet from a very young age, there were those type of women that were always around the taxi rank, and some of the women that I started dating in the evening, they will become prostitutes. So I was really young and naive, and I believed in true love. So it happened that when I had worked for the whole year, our boss, who had the taxis in which I was a taxi driver, he was such a good man, and he wanted to give us a Christmas bonus. At that time, there was this other older lady that I was dating. She was really beautiful, even though she had 3 children and she was older than I was. When I told her that our boss was going to give us our first Christmas bonus, then that was when she started saying that I had been using her for a very long time, and she knew that I was dating other young girls, and for me to prove my love to her, all that I had to do was that I had to get married to her. So after I had gotten my bonus money, we then went to my wife's village. At that time we were not yet married, so we went there. It was only me and some of my friends that I had befriended when I had started staying in the city. We went there and they pretended as if they were my relatives, and I paid for the bride price, even though I had paid for the bride price, but the money that I still had, it was quite a lot, because during the Christmas holidays, sometimes what we'll do is that we would be operating on the road without the knowledge of our boss. So we used to make a lot of money, and I used to give this money to my new wife, that older lady that I had recently married. When we went for the second time to her village, this was during the festive holidays, I had given her the money. I had told her that she was supposed to hide this money because we didn't want this money to get stolen, and she said that she was going to keep it safe for me as well, for her, because we wanted to buy some property, but back in the village from where I come from. Whilst we were in the village, that was when she whispered sweet words into my ears, and she told me that it was a wise decision, that now that we had this money, and in her village she had already spoken with her brother, and her brother was willing to give us some space so that we can start building, as well as selling some of his cattle to us, because he wanted to buy a car. And this seemed to be a very good deal, because when we sat down and whilst we were writing everything on paper, we saw that even after we had bought everything that we would have bought, we would be left with a lot of money. So we decided that this was a very good thing for us to do. So I then spoke with my in-law. He went and he showed me the piece of land that he wanted to sell to me, and after that he showed me the cattle that he wanted to sell to me. After we had given him the money, he then went and he bought his used car. From there on, me and my wife, we then returned back to the city. But here and there, my wife, since we had purchased the cattle as well as the land that her brother had sold us, she used to go back to her village. And after a while, my brother, that was when I started saying that now that we have all of these properties and our livestock, we need to have a child, so that if anything happens to me, at least I'll know that my child that God would have given me would have something to inherit. That is when I can say that we started to experience some difficulties in our marriage. She didn't want to give birth. She said, first, you need to finish paying up the bride price for me. Otherwise, if I have a child for you, you would refuse to finish up paying the bride price. And when I tried to speak with her sisters, they were also in agreement with her. They said that maybe you just want to use her. You need to go back so that you can pay off the bride price. This was very painful for me because already I thought that I had played my duty as a husband who wanted to show her woman that he really loved her, but now she was refusing to give birth, to give me a child. After that, the more that we fought, that was when one day her brothers came from the village, and they came to the city without ever telling me, and I was at work at that time. And when I returned back home late in the evening, I found out that the room was empty. They had loaded everything. They had only left 2 pots for me and a cooking stick and a few plates, nothing to eat. And when I tried to call my wife, she then started crying, and she said that she was tired because I had been abusing her for a very long time, so she wanted to go back to the village and to rest. That was when her brothers started speaking with me, and they said that they didn't want me to talk with their sister anymore. And from there on, even though it was really painful, but I understood what had happened. These people, they had seen that my wife, she had managed to steal all of my money, so they didn't want anything to do with me anymore. I decided to let it go. At that time, the taxi that I was driving, it used to go to Mutare. So whilst I was there, that was when I thought of crossing over to Mozambique so that I can look for work. At that time, I had started dating this other woman. Her father was moved from Mozambique and her mom was from Zim. So she encouraged me to come over to Mozambique so that we can start afresh, because she knew that I had a very painful past. I then managed to go to Mozambique and I started staying with my wife, but quickly I then found out that she was also a cheating type. I then started working for this other local man. Whilst I was working with him, I told him all of my story. I told him my story, and he said that he knew someone who could help me with revenge. When we went there, all that was needed was the blood of a cow, because the money that I had lost, my brother, it was quite a lot. No matter how hard I would try to forget about it, but it pained me because I kept on thinking that with the money that my boss had given me and the money that I had stolen from my boss doing those illegal routes with his taxis, I could have even purchased my own second-hand taxi and started my transport business, but I had spent it all on my wife. So when we went to that village, that herbalist said that if I could manage to buy a cow, then we could have that cow slaughtered, then the revenge can start. He even promised me that if we had done this ritual, they were going to return back all the money that they had forcefully taken from me. So I worked, my brother, for many months. After that, when I saw that the money that he had said that if I had managed to budget such and such an amount, I should come back to him, then he would sell me one amongst his cattle. I then went back to that village, and after I had given him the money, he went with me to his cattle kraal, and I had to choose the cow that I wanted. From there on, he said that the next morning what was supposed to happen is that he was going to go with me to the river and with his assistants, and there was a ceremony that was supposed to be performed at the river. The next morning we went to the river and the ceremony started. All along I had written the name of that woman who had used brought me back home in Zim and dumped me after she had stolen my money. I had written her name on a piece of paper and I gave it to that traditional healer, and that traditional healer dipped that piece of paper that had her name written on it, and the river, as it was flowing, it then took that piece of paper. After we had slaughtered the cow, then that traditional healer took a clay pot, and then the blood that was flowing out of that cow, it was flowing into that clay pot. Then that traditional healer said that we had to chop up the rest of the cow so that we can throw it as well into the river, and that was what we did. After we had done all of that, I then saw that there was a snake that was moving on top of the water and it was headed for us. I was really scared, but that traditional healer said that I was not supposed to be scared of that snake. That snake then came out of the river. That traditional healer said that we had to give it space, so we went and we sat down at this other rock that was close to that river, and we watched that snake as it was drinking the blood that was inside that clay pot. Late at night, whilst I was at the healer's house, I then saw that my ex-wife, she appeared to me in spirit. When I saw her, I thought that maybe I was losing my mind, so I started screaming. When I was screaming, that herbalist assistant came to me and I told her everything that I had seen. She rushed back and she spoke with the herbalist. That herbalist then called me into his consulting room. That was when that herbalist called again the spirit of my ex-wife to appear in spirit. And when she appeared, she was crying and she said that, "What is it that I have done to you that has made you to choose this path that you are about to take? Why have you chosen to take my life and to take the life of the baby that I am carrying?" Meaning that she was pregnant at the time when I did all of these rituals. My brother, then that herbalist convinced me and he said that we had to finish up this ritual that we had started, otherwise everything was going to backfire. He said that my wife's spirit was suspended in a world whereby there is the spiritual world and there is another land, which is the land of the living, and she was caught up in between. So we needed to finish up this ritual that we were doing. So I then went on and I sacrificed my wife and with whatever she was carrying in her womb. From there on, my brother, I returned back to my work, and after a couple of years, when I saw that my life was not progressing there in Mozambique, I then chose to return back to Zim and I continued working as a taxi driver. So the thing that started happening is that from the day that I heard that my ex-wife had passed away from a very mysterious disease that no one could even understand, I started to experience nightmares. Usually what would happen is that if I would sleep, especially when I would be in my taxi, then I would see her standing in front of the taxi, and when I would wake up, I would see that there will be a woman that will be pregnant that will be standing in front of the taxi, but quickly that woman will just disappear, even though this woman that will be standing in front of the taxi will be very different from my ex-wife. So this is the thing that has been happening, my brother. For many, many years, I have tried to hide this thing that has been happening, but now it is even getting worse. Last time, I had gone and applied for a job so that I can become a cross-border truck driver, but what stopped me is that on the day that I was supposed to go there so that they can test me, when I tried to enter into the truck, I saw that there was a woman, and yes, indeed, there was a physical woman who was there. She was one of the instructors who was there to see if I will be able to drive that truck. But when I looked at her, I saw that her face changed, and the face, it became like the face of my late ex-wife. So I then said I do not want to get into that truck, and I was afraid that the more that people kept on questioning me as to why I didn't want to get into the truck, if I told them the truth, then everyone that was there was going to think that maybe I was mentally ill or something. So I just got out of the taxi. So I got out of the truck and I left the premises and I returned back home. Now I am just working as a taxi driver, but things are not okay. I feel like I am losing my mind. Each and every day, I feel like I am losing a piece of my mind.